Beware.
High Beams, part of the classic urban legend series by the Prowler. Julie was wrapping up her shift at the perfume counter in the department store she worked at in the mall. The day was long and tiring, and she looked forward to spending a nice, relaxing evening at home and going to bed. The one thing she was not looking forward to, however, was being one of the last ones to leave, which comes with the territory with the closing shift. An empty parking lot late at night, with no one around, gave her the creeps. She's seen the movies. She knows the drill. Even though she was on high alert, the feeling of leaving the safety of the building and having to make her way out to the car made her uneasy, even though she parked in the parking lot right outside the front doors. On this night, she was particularly tired. The store had been swamped all day and night, with it being close to the holiday season. She even had a few bags herself, full of presents to lug out to her car. She locked up and said goodbye to a few of her straggler co-workers that headed in the opposite direction as her. That's when she was hit with the first hint of uneasiness. Where was the security guard who was usually patrolling this part of the parking lot? No security car, no guard, just the cold night air that hit her skin as she surveyed the parking lot. The wind began to pick up and howl into the cold, hollow night, and that's when she was hit with a second feeling of uneasiness. The parking lot wasn't empty. There was a van parked in the parking space across from hers. The lights were off, but she thought she could make out the silhouette of a man in the front seat. She walked in a quickened pace, but didn't run, for she did not want to alert the man in the van. As she reached her driver's side door, she was still struggling to get her keys from her purse, which she had been trying to do the entire walk to her car. She was panicked, but it wasn't full-blown yet. All she wanted to do was get inside her car and leave. As she finally got a firm hold of her keys and pulled them from her purse, the van's lights turned on, blinding her eyes for only a moment. She raised her hand up to shield her eyes from the lights, and she could make out the man exiting his van. She was full-on panicking at this point. She quickly got her door open and threw all her bags on the passenger seat. She could see the man in the corner of her eye. He was huge, and he was walking towards her. As she quickly flung herself inside the car, she thought she heard him saying something to her, but couldn't make it out, because the wind had picked up quite a bit. A storm was approaching. She quickly jammed the key into the ignition and started up the car. At that very moment, a loud bang hit her window.
Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
She put the car in drive and peeled out, barely making it out alive, she thought, his scream still barely being heard as she did so. As she pulled out onto the highway, she felt a sense of relief. She was alone, and she was safe, on her way home. Just then the entire inside of her car was lit up. Julie looked into her rear-view mirror. It was the man, and he was hitting her with his high beams. She became panicked once more. What did he want? She thought. Why is he doing this to me? In her frightened state, she did all she could to keep control of the car and her wits about her. All the way down the highway, on, off, he kept flashing his high beams every few minutes. He's trying to get me to crash, she thought. She saw a bright neon sign coming up in the distance. It was an all-night diner, just off the next off-ramp. She slammed on the pedal. "I can get help there," she mumbled to herself. The first time during this whole ordeal, feeling some kind of relief. She took the exit and sped into the parking lot, screaming for help as she jumped out of the car and made her way into the restaurant. She told the waitress to call the police, the man in the van just pulling into the parking lot as she did so. Julie then pointed and said, "That man out there, in that van, has been following me for miles, flashing his high beams and trying to drive me off the road." She sat and waited for the police, sitting at the counter, watching the man in the van the entire time. He didn't move. He just sat there and watched. It didn't take the police long to arrive, and when they did, Julie ran out and told them everything that happened. They dragged the man out of the van at gunpoint, throwing him to the ground. He began to scream,
"No, wait, you don't want me. I didn't do anything wrong. There's a man in her back seat. I was just trying to save the lady."
The one officer stayed with the man in the van, while the others slowly made their way to check the back seat of Julie's car. There, the officer found a man with a knife, grinning sinisterly at him. The man in the back seat was arrested and put in the back of the squad car. As the man in the van explained it, he was leaving the department store after picking up a few presents just before closing time. And as he was loading everything in the back of his van, he saw the man get in the back seat of the car and then slump down, never getting up the entire time he was watching him. The man in the van thought it was strange that somebody would just get in the back seat and take a nap in a parking lot with a winter storm approaching. So he sat and watched, and when he noticed the girl walking towards the car, he knew the car didn't belong to the man who got into the back seat. As she got closer, he saw the man in the back seat pop up for just a second. He had a knife, and he was watching her. And as she got closer, he quickly laid back down and hid. The man in the van said that's why he turned on his lights right when she got to her car, trying to show her there was a man back there. And when she didn't notice, he got out and tried to warn her. He said what he was screaming was there was a man with a knife in the back seat. Get out of the car. Then when she didn't listen, he followed, trying to make sure the man in the back seat couldn't attack her. Every time the man sat up to stab her, that's when the man in the van would flash his high beams. High beams is a classic urban legend that dates back to the late 60s, first talked about by folklorist Carlos Drake in late 1968 from conversations with Indiana college students. It later gained more attention, however, in 1982 when it was mentioned in an Ann Landers advice column. There are, of course, many different versions and interpretations to this classic piece of American folklore, while usually always involving a woman driving alone and being pursued by another car or truck, following close behind and scaring the woman. They then flash their high beams, trying to prevent the killer in the back seat, who the woman does not know about, from attacking. Other versions have the woman stopping for gas, and the gas station attendant informs the woman there's a problem with her credit card, and they need to speak with her on the phone. Then once inside the safety of the gas station, the attendant tells the woman there's a man in her back seat. There's many other different locations and scenarios where this story plays out, all with the same moral to them, though. The person who tries to help the driver, that being the attendant at the gas station, the man in the van or truck, comes off as frightening, a scary-looking man who the woman mistrusts without reason. She believes the attendant or driver intends to do her harm, when in fact, he is the one who saves her life. Bring out the old adage, never judge a book by its cover. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel for your overwhelming generosity. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories and poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness and Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank all my listeners for your kindness, your encouragement, and your support. It means the world to me. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.